So Anna will tell us about basically the e-residency, about if there is a possibility to make Estonia a role model for Ukraine. Anna is a project coordinator in the industry and has been involved in the German-Ukrainian Researcher Network, GURN. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Otherwise, feel free to introduce yourself in the proper way, Anna. And I would say the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much. So as you correctly said, Raphael, I have been involved with Ukraine for a while. My last engagement and activity was is in the German-Ukrainian Researcher Network, where we tried to improve the capacity of researchers, but also NGO members in Ukraine. Sadly, our last capacity building was online held due to COVID-19. And since I've been involved not only in Ukraine, but also in the Eastern European region as a whole, I want to build a bridge between Estonia, which is considered as one of the digital leaders within the post-Soviet space and beyond, and Ukraine, since, and I here refer to my previous speaker, Ukraine has also a very solid IT and ICT sector evolving, and thus we see some potential when it comes to the future, be it closer, be it far for Estonia, but also, not, of course, in this case of Ukraine. So let me first shortly brief you on E-Estonia. I'm wondering whether some of you have already heard about E-Estonia when you're in particular curious about digitalization, digital transformation. Are there maybe also some e-residents in the audience? Raise your hand, or if you want, you can also comment in the chat.
Yeah, so I actually very recently became an e-resident, applied a couple of weeks ago for Estonia, and I still have to pick up my card. To be honest, I still have to figure out how I'm going to use it exactly, because the e-residency model is not always trivial, in terms of taxation and all sorts of questions. But I'm definitely looking into it, and I'm also curious about what the Ukrainian variant will look like, because I think in general it's a very attractive proposition to be able to incorporate a business in a country without coming there at all or spending too much time there. For example, if you want to hire people in Ukraine and for whatever reason you say, okay, actually I want to have my own legal entity there to do that. I think that's very interesting, and it's nice that there's this digital way, which is so much faster than how it is in some countries in the world where you need to go to a notary and all this stuff. So that's also why I'm personally so interested in this talk.
I think Raphael already gave a very nice and vivid introduction how this application process runs in his case. And I shortly want to give you a first overview of the physical space also of Estonia, because I feel we cannot only focus on the digital sphere, the digital narrative, and the digital nation we may see in Estonia. But in the next step, I will then focus on the e-residency, its development over the years since 2014 when it was first launched. And I in particular want to give you a briefing what E-Estonia means of a digital soft power, because as Rafa also already wonderfully described, there are some challenges, and it's not so clear what all is included in this e-residency. So we will discuss this hopefully a little bit short together, and then I will briefly bring you this bridge to Ukraine in particular, but also in the post-Soviet space in the general as a whole, because E-Estonia is not only a role model for the post-Soviet space, but also a digital role model when it comes to the whole community of countries in the whole world. So when we see Estonia, it's not so attractive, let's say briefly and shortly, when it comes to its geopolitical region. It has not so many resources existing besides wood. We do not see a lot of infrastructure. We do not see a lot of, let's say, companies, and in that regard, Estonia was considered as a hub during the Soviet space for the aerospace, and thus we also have a lot of ICT educated people living in Estonia in the 90s, which were the basis for building up a new government after after the Soviet Union declined. And the Estonian ICT employees, they actually built up this new public administration. There was a need to build a new public administration due to the fact they wanted to cut the past, they wanted to cut the existing public administration, which was built up by the Soviets. So there was a tremendous luck for the Estonians to have the accessibility of those employees, of those experts. We also see Finland and Sweden close to Estonia, but also Great Britain, and in particular Finland, they very much supported Estonia in rebuilding their public administration. But contrary to the current narrative, it was never a vision, a really big vision of Estonia to become a digital leader, to digitalize the public administration due to a bigger vision, bigger picture behind. That was actually backwards the vision they built. It was just basic needs. There was the need to start a new public administration. There was a need to get access or get accessibility to the people living in the rural spheres, and especially also in the urban areas, of course. But also that was most importantly, the third point, the Finnish and the British people, they supported them. In particular, Nokia, for instance, supported the Estonians in building up this infrastructure. So in that regard, we see since the 1990s a huge rise economy-wise for Estonia, and the Estonian society has never been as prosperous as now. So Estonia has a huge impact when it comes to the current inflation. The labor market remains tight. So in the end, Estonia has profited from the liberalization since the 1990s. It is a very strict liberalization, and some research also consider the advertisement that there is a Baltic tiger rising as a self-fulfilling prophecy due to the fact that they advertise internationally their attractivity when it comes to the localization as a very liberal-oriented government. But in the end, it's also a high-risk narrative they build up because, as I said, the markets are very limited for Estonia. There is tourism now coming up. There are woods, but in the end, the resources are limited they can sell. So in the end, the Estonian government realized that they actually can build a good narrative on the digital transformation, and that's now the important point for Ukraine, but also for the post-Soviet space in general and beyond. They can also advertise and consult other governments, and there are no existing data due to the fact that several stakeholders, of course, consult, be it state-oriented or state-close agencies. But in the end, it's also part of the economy that Estonia consults other countries, other governments worldwide in their ICT developments. So in this regard, Estonia is one of the pioneers in various surveys when it comes to the digital transformation, in particular of the public administration. But we also see in reality, when we compare Estonia with other countries, that they are a little above the average or in the medium of the average, but they are not always the forerunner as they consider themselves. So the motivation behind this digital transformation is, as I said, the cut to start a new public administration, but also in a second step, Estonia built on this rebranding of Estonia as anti-Russia. And here we come to a very interesting and socially very complex situation, and all Estonians who may attend here or people who are also involved in this topic may contribute here. Estonia has one of the highest numbers of minorities when it comes to ethnic Russians. They are not Russians by citizenship, but they are ethnic Russians considered. And when it comes to human rights violation, Estonia is a sad forerunner in that regard, that ethnic Russians have tremendous unprivileged situations in Estonia. It gets better in the younger generation, but still today there is a rivalry between Estonians and ethnic Russians. And this is also considered as a huge problem, a huge challenge when it comes to the situation of the ethnic Russians, since they are most often stateless people with little or less rights. They ethnic Russians, they have an interest, or some of them have an interest not to have the citizenship of Estonia due to the fact that they can easier travel to Russia, and thus they can import their daily products much easier. So in the end, there are double and triple layers why this dynamics between the ethnic Estonians and the ethnic Russians in Estonia is of a challenge. When it comes to the public administration and the public representation, we now see some improvements, meaning that also in the parliament there are ethnic Russians represented. But when it comes to the current government, we see there is a very, let's say, traditional oriented government existing, which have a very clear communication when it comes to the role of ethnic Russians in the whole society. So in this regard, it's very interesting that Estonia wants to open its borders with the e-residency, since it considers itself as a digital nation. Everyone in the world can apply, but in the physical space, not all people are, let's say, invited to join the Estonian citizenship, which is in a certain sense a contradiction and can be discussed further. So as I said, in 2014, the Republic of Estonia established the first e-residency ship worldwide to empower the entrepreneurial spirit worldwide, meaning e-residency does not mean any citizen or residencyship rights, but entrepreneurial/business rights in Estonia. Because the end goal is, they advertise, thanks to the Estonian e-residencyship, you can get access to the European single market, which is of course a difference when it comes to comparing other post-Soviet countries such as Georgia or Ukraine, who do not directly have direct access to the European single market. The first round of e-residency I consider is from 2014 to 2018, and it was not as a success as it was advertised. For instance, the goal was to launch this e-residency ship in 2014 and achieving 1 million e-residents by 2020. We have not yet achieved this. In 2020, 58,000 e-residents were registered, and not all of them launched a company. I think, Raphael, you have also not yet launched an Estonian company, but I would gladly learn more about your future steps maybe in this regard. Because in the end, it's a challenge to launch such a company in Estonia. The e-residents also need to travel to Estonia back and forth, and this does not make it easy for people to get empowered worldwide thanks to the e-residencyship, because in the end you need first a solid basis of access to money and also access to passports to travel to Estonia, and thus an empowerment of entrepreneurs worldwide is, let's say, a very, very high level goal. So in the end, I want to focus now in the next minutes a little bit more again on this contradiction between the Russians and the Estonians, the ethnic Russians to be precise, and the Estonians in Estonia, because in the end, this narrative is also closely connected to an attack we had in 2007, when the first cyber attacks officially happened worldwide and Estonia was the victim. It is not yet considered whether the Russian government was involved or not, but based on the fact that the Estonians wanted, or actually did, remove the Soviet soldier, which is or which was in a place of popularity within Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, the ethnic Russians, which see that the Estonians tried to diminish the Soviet history, got aggressive. They started riots, and even people were injured and one person died. And based on those riots, cyber attacks happened over weeks. And as I said, it's not it was the first cyber attack. It was not the last. In the previous months, we also saw some cyber attacks happening in Estonia, most likely from the Russian government and its wider sphere. So in that regard, the e-residencyship is a digital soft power tool for Estonia to be visible, to be seen worldwide. Estonia does know it's a country of, let's say, a small state, and small states have its advantages and disadvantages in international politics. And one advantage is that in a, let's say, in a particular policy sphere, you can have a huge impact and influence. And here, Estonia had a very successful advertisement strategy in that sense, that they build this narrative to be a digital leader, a digital transformation leader when it comes to, in particular, the public administration. And thus, the e-residencyship is actually the cherry on top that Estonians can advertise in any embassy worldwide. See, here is an app, here you can apply for the e-residency. And so they are known and they're aware, because their worst fear is to have a similar experience like the Ukrainians have nowadays, that there will be an invasion, a Russian invasion happening. And thus, in contrast to Ukraine, the Estonians feel they have a limited geographic influence or importance, and thus they have this huge fear and want to be seen, want to be visible as the digital leader. Here we see also, advertisement, but also public releases, which is one of many in any kind of area. Estonia tries to be the forerunner, be it in the health situation or in the healthcare situation during COVID-19, during the OECD's new digital revolution plans. Every time Estonia tries to be a forerunner, also in terms of bitcoins, and they started to discuss whether they want to have a state-owned bitcoin. In the end, most of them are just releases, launches, discussions, but also, as in the idea of the e-residencyship, also tests how to run a business online or not. As said, there are e-residencies, there are companies with barriers, but also drivers. But in the end, the main core point I see for Estonia is to build a role model in the post-Soviet space and beyond. And the e-residencyship is copied, for instance, in Kazakhstan or also in Georgia. The concepts are different, based on indicators such as the accessibility for people who can apply and who cannot. And in the case of Ukraine, I would consider the three following points. One, the access to the European market is of a key importance when it comes to the advertisement and the area of the Estonian e-residency. B, as we wonderfully heard before, there are already a lot of developers, and thus there is, of course, a niche existing in Ukraine where it may has a huge and tremendous advantage to build up such digital companies, but most probably not in Ukraine, but in the partner countries. And C, and foremost, is also the question how you want to rephrase or phrase this sentence or this word, residency. Should it really be e-residency in the end? Because as we see, the social narrative of this word e-residency has an impact, and in taking into consideration the whole geographic sphere, it is doubtful that let's say membership for economic interest, business interest to support entrepreneurs shall be considered as a residency, a citizenship. It is also translated sometimes in many in particular German-speaking newspaper articles, and this is questionable. And thus I expect that Ukraine itself will rebuild its very solid and very well-developed digital public administration. But I expect that Ukraine will most likely take another path. But as we also heard before, they have also the knowledge, they have the ICT employees in the country to rebuild their digital public administration as it was before the invasion in 2014 and 2022 and beyond. So in that regard, I thank you very much for your attention, and in case you have any questions or comments, please let me know.